All right, guys. Today we're going to continue on with lesson 7. Uh, on Monday, you worked on some long division of fractions to help us kind of see the connection between fractions and their decimal counterparts, both rational and irrational, ones that end and ones that do not end. Today we're going to look at kind of the idea of some of these decimals and how we can order them, especially when it comes to those repeating decimals, or as this lesson says, infinite decimals. So today we're going to start by looking at this idea of expanded form. And all they mean by that is using power to 10. So we're going to write these in a way that just looks a little different than what we've been used to. So let me switch to a different color. In this expanded form, we're going to using place value basically to do this. So we're going to look at this first one, this 0.3, that's 3/10. So we'll say 3 over 10 plus, well, then we look at our second decimal point, which is 7/100. So we would do 7 over 10 squared, because that's hundredths. Then we would do 6 over 10 to the third, and then 5 over 10 to the fourth. So that's our expanded form. A little bit easier to do when we have a finite decimal, a decimal that just ends. In this case, it ends with 5 or stop. Part B says to do the same thing for the decimal 0.3 repeating. So we would start 3 over 10 plus 3 over 10 squared plus 3 over 10 to the third. And now the problem with this is if we were to keep doing this, we'd have to go on forever because it's a repeating decimal. So in this case, we're going to denote that by just putting a plus sign and 3 little periods, which is called an ellipses, which means just and continuing on. So again, just to see that connection here of how we break these numbers down. Now we go to example 1, and this is kind of the crux of what we're going to be doing today, which is to take a look at a number and break it down so that we can understand its place value. In this case, we start with the number 0.253, or 253,000. So we'd start to say, okay, our first spot is going to be if we were to write that as a fraction, would be 2 over 10. We're finding that this point stands somewhere is in between 0.2 and 0.3, which we can see now. So we know that 0.253 would be somewhere in here. We can say it is between these 2 points, and so we've expanded these points out to here. So now this is on this end of our number line is 0.2, on this end is 0.3. And we know that our next decimal or digit is a 5, so we can say that it's 0.25 something. So it's going to be somewhere in here, and we expand this out to 0.25, 0.26, and then we can find that 0.253 sits right here in between 0.25 and 0.26. Similar idea on the next page. If you go ahead and turn the page, we're on page 70. We have a repeating decimal, 0.83 repeating. So we can do the same process. We know that the 0.8 is 8/10. It's somewhere between 0.8 and 0.9, which are denoted here. And then we have our next decimal, and all the repeating ones are 3. So 0.83. We can see that our number is going to fall somewhere in that range. And again, we could keep going forever, but we're not going to do that. So now we're going to practice kind of documenting these out in the same way. So this first question says, write the expanded form of the decimal 0.125 using powers of 10. So we kind of keep the same process we've been doing. So we'd say that it's 1 over 10, because it's the 10th, plus 2 over 10 squared, because 2/100, plus 5 over 10 to the third, which would be 5,000. So 125,000. If we want to place that here on our number line, then we would say, okay, our first decimal is 0.1. So 0.1 is right here. Right here. And then we know then that if we're going to expand this down to our next number line, that this is going to be 0.1, our lower end of our boundary, and this is going to be 0.2. And that our number lies between those. And then our next decimal is a 2. So we would find that 0.12, 0.12 is going to be right here. And if we expand that out, we know this is going to be our lower boundary, and 0.13 is our upper boundary. And then we can find our last number, which is a 5, and go 0.121 through 2, 3, 4, and 5. 0.125. Again, the idea behind these number lines are just kind of showing us in general where something lies. 2 works about the same way. We write an expanded form. We have 3 over 10, because it's the 10th place, plus 8 over 10 squared, plus 7 over 10 to the third, plus 5 over 10 to the fourth. And then we can find these numbers. We know that 0.3 lies between 0 and 1. It's right here, 0.3. And that's our lower boundary. And 0.4 is our upper boundary. And then our next digit is an 8. So we're looking for 8, the 8th spot between the 0.3 and 0.4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 0.38. And that's our lower boundary. And 0.39 is our upper boundary. Then we're looking for a 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And this becomes 0.387, which that becomes our lower boundary. And 0.388 becomes our upper boundary. And then we're just finding the last digit, which is a 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this becomes 0.3875. Can just finding these out based on their place value. Okay, turn the page. Now we have a repeating decimal of 0.7 repeating. We're going to write this in expanded form. It's going to look kind of the same as we go. So it's 7 over 10 plus 7 over 10 squared plus 7 over 10 to the third plus 7 over 10 to the fourth. It looks like 104. To write that a little bit clearer. And we would say that then we could add a plus, and it's just going to go on forever. To put this out on our number line, again, we're going to be using 7s, as you can tell. So we're going to find 7 tenths, the 7th spot between 0 and 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 0.7. That becomes our lower boundary. 0.8 becomes our upper boundary. We find the 7th again. 0.77. That's our lower boundary. 0.78. It's our upper boundary. We do it again. 0.777. Lower boundary, upper boundary, and you can see that this would continue on and eventually would stop. Okay? Let's jump to number 5. So on page 73, number 5. Now the idea that this last question says is we want to order these 4 numbers. We have 1 number here, 2 number, our 3rd number, and our 4th number from least to greatest. So we got to look and think on the terms of a number line, what would be our smallest? And in this case, our smallest is going to be 2.1. It is the smallest one on our list. The next smallest number is going to be 2.121212. Because at some point it stops. Our 3rd number is going to be 2.12 repeating, because it's a little bit bigger than 2.1212. And then our largest number in this group is 2.2. So, using this, what I'd like you to do is the problem set. And the problem set is only a certain problems, and I'll type this out as well. But on the problem set, yours looks a little different than mine. Yours is on page 81. I want you to do question 1, both parts of that. Question 2, both parts of that. And then you're going to jump and just do question number 6. I want you to try that. Best way for this is all fits on one sheet. Text it to me, scan it, and email it, whatever works easiest for you. I'll put a Google Classroom assignment post for it as well, so you can turn it in there. I know a few people did that. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Give me a call, send me an email, and hopefully you'll be able to do this successfully, and we'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day.